Greetings, my excellent friend.
Welcome to Heavy Metal
History.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to this edition of the Heavy Metal History Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Dustin, and joining me all the way from Australia is Matt.
Hey, good day, everyone.
Well, before we get started, something we should address, and that's the amount of time we've done between episodes. I hope you guys understand. It's really, really hard for us to kind of sync up sometimes, especially with our daily schedules and lives. So we appreciate your patience in waiting, and I think we got a good one lined up today.
Yeah, exactly. A flu couldn't keep me out. A wedding couldn't keep me out from doing this one today. So let's jump into it, mate.
Yeah. So we got about like 6 albums to talk about today.
Yeah.
Pretty good. So just to give a rundown, we're going to talk about Motorhead's Rock and Roll, Creator's Terrible Certainty, Armored Saint, Raising Fear, Carnivore, Retaliation, and Grim Reaper, Rock You to Hell, and Savatage, Hall of the Mountain King. Time permitting, we will talk about a couple new releases that I'm stoked to talk about. If not, that's what we got on the docket today. So this is September 1987. All of these albums came out in September of 1987. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And the more we kind of get down into it, I don't know what you basically. We'll get into basically the. I was going to say, normally when we do these things, it's about either two or three, kind of albums in a month. But now we're starting to get into the kind of the road. So I think this is, probably just before Christmas. Things are wanting to really kind of start coming out, now, and we're really starting to see, more and more albums get released, the later we go down the months of the year.
Yeah, things are going to start getting pretty packed. Usually we would break these up into like 2-part episodes, but I feel since we've made you guys wait, one episode's good, and I know we can get through this. So to start off, we're going to talk about Motorhead's Rock and Roll, and this is probably one of the, I don't want to say worst albums in their discography, but it's definitely a more looked down upon record. If you kind of go through their whole entire discography, it's even just as far as like album sales go, it's probably one of their worst selling records.
Yeah, and it's probably one of their more kind of forgettable records as well.
Yeah, it's a pretty mediocre record. There's no two ways around it. It was rushed a little bit, trying to capitalize on like the U.S. fan base, because it was growing, and you can kind of tell that the songwriting suffers a little bit for it. You got songs like Traitor. It goes in like a really strange direction after the chorus, and songs like All For You and Dogs they're kind of dull in a way, if that makes sense.
No, I get it. It's this is like the 8th album in like 7 years.
Yeah, that's the other thing is album 8. Even for Motorhead, like that's in this time, this is like their decade probably. Like their first album came out like 77, 76, I think, right?
I think it was like 78.
Okay. Yeah, so
no, it was definitely, it was 77, my mistake.
No, it's all good. So they're pushing a decade's worth of music at this point, and so, the fatigue of just being a band that long is probably, what pushed this album in this direction of, like, kind of phoning it in, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like the one kind of standout song from this album is essentially Eat the Rich, and the rest is just B-sides.
Yeah, and the one reason Eat the Rich is like kind of the more known one is because it was used in a movie, and I think the movie was also called Eat the Rich, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
But this is like as I said, this is even when they're talking about, I think the guitarist Phil Campbell, he describes this album. It's like, I like it. It's not a great album, but it's got things there I like, and that's good things I like, and that's pretty much kind of what sums it up. It's good. It's not great.
Yeah, that was from the
And so
documentary.
even when you have your own guitarist, Yeah, and even when you have your own guitarist basically going back and saying that, then what do you really think just the average kind of consumer, the average fan of Motorhead really has to say about this album? So
I think that they would agree. A lot of people, and at least you can kind of recognize too that, like, there's some stuff in there that's worth a Motorhead album. It's just that they didn't take the time to expand upon it and really make a good album. They just kind of made an album. But there's something else Campbell was talking about too. He was saying that the studio manager had informed them that the studio that they were recording in was owned by Michael Palin, who is very famously from Monty Python. So Motorhead, like, they're all huge Monty Python fans. They invited him to come down and do a recitation for the album. So Palin showed up dressed in like a 1940s cricketer outfit with a V-neck sweater and his hair all brushed to one side.
Yeah, you got your test match whites on. So for all you Americans out there that don't know what that is, basically what it is, you just have kind of like white slacks with kind of like a white, maybe like a polo shirt or kind of long sleeve kind of polo shirt, and you got like the white kind of sweater vest on.
Yeah.
And that's basically what both teams will essentially wear.
Yep. That's pretty funny of him, though, like, just to be that eccentric with that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, I can really kind of just see it now, and I'm just having just a quiet chuckle to myself.
Yeah, Lemmy says that he remembers Palin walking in and saying, "Hello, what sort of thing are we doing now then?" And Lemmy answering just kind of like, "Well, you know how in The Meaning of Life there was a speech that began, 'Oh Lord,' and Palin just replies, 'Give me some Cathedral,' and went in and recorded the 'Oh Lord, look down upon these people' from Motorhead speech." So there you have it, just by happenstance, man. Like, they got Michael Palin to come on and record like a silly little thing for them just because he owned the studio and they were big fans. And this was
but yeah, we're talking.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, yeah. Another kind of more kind of celebrity kind of things as well. We're talking about that song "Eat the Rich." It actually was written for a film that actually had Lemmy, Kustak, Bill Wayman, and actually Paul McCartney. They all appeared in this one film.
Yeah.
Now, don't ask me what the film's about.
I was going to say, I've never seen the film either, and I'm kind of curious as to what it's about or if it's even, like, remotely good.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to watch, maybe, and just kind of see, Lemmy acting in a movie.
Yeah. I'm sure he's done a heap of, like cameos of things. Wasn't there that film that had, like, Adam Sandler or something where they were, like, basically like a Motorhead-esque type band and they held, like, a radio station hostage?
Yeah, I was about to say Airheads. Yeah,
Airheads, that's the one.
Yeah, that's where that famous line comes from. Who would win in a fight, Lemmy or God? Trick question. Lemmy is God. But yeah, Lemmy is a god, man. Like, I was just, in doing research for this album, I was, like, still reading, like, a bunch of articles about Lemmy and stuff, and just, like, the bandmates, like, talking about his passing and stuff, and it's just like, fuck, man. Like, I even read kind of like a little thing from the guitar player where I guess the guitar player was there when he died. He just kind of said, Lemmy went to go lay down, and he said, "Fuck this shit," and then just, like, that was it. He died. That was, like, his last words. Something along those lines. I forget exactly what he said, but I was like, damn, dude, that sounds like Lemmy.
I was gonna say, it's almost like 4 years and a month to the day that he died.
Yeah.
Because I remember I was in America and, like, I saw the news and I was like, just goddamn, it just ruins my, like, night.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, man. It's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
But he was old. He lived a hard, good life, and I think even the guitar player was saying that too. Like, he'll attest to it. It's like he had a good life, man. So
yeah, he made a go of it.
So this was actually one of the albums where the original drummer, Filthy Phil Taylor, had kind of come back into the band too. And it's kind of unfortunate that this is the album that he chose to come back to, because it doesn't really showcase his playing abilities a lot. That I think, anyways, because they got rid of their drummer Pete, and Lemmy. This is kind of like a little snippet from his memoir in 2002, and Lemmy kind of gives his assessment on the album, and he says, anyhow, with Pete gone, we get Phil Taylor's job back. It was a mistake in retrospect. Things weren't the same, and I should have known that they wouldn't be. Rock and Roll is a fair album, but it isn't one of our best. Our biggest mistake was choosing Guy Bidmead to produce it. He was just an engineer, really, so we were pretty much producing ourselves, and guitarist Wurzel was having a bad time personally. In addition to all this, we just didn't have enough time to do the songs properly, and when that happens, you're pretty much wasting your time. So, I mean, that's straight from the man. He even says, like, nothing was just really coming together, and they were just, kind of fucking
just
making a shitty album.
Making a shitty album. Label probably said they had to do it. Had to get the contract going, keep the contract going, keep the money, rolling in, and it's just unfortunate. Yeah.
I mean, if they were just given a little bit more time and like really given those songs time to like gestate and like really, I mean, they didn't have to make a perfect album, but it could have been better.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And this is kind of one of those things too. When I was talking in the last episode with Blaine about like the Cannibal Corpse album. It's like, well, what does Cannibal Corpse really have to do? Nothing. They're Cannibal Corpse. They can put out whatever the fuck they want to. But at this point, they're not going to put out a bad album. There's nothing that they're going to write, and it's going to be like, oh, that's fucking terrible, or like less than. It's just going to be Cannibal Corpse. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
You don't have to expect anything better than that.
Exactly. It's the same with Cannibal Corpse. It's the same with AC/DC. It's the same with Motorhead. They've got themselves basically into kind of a groove.
Yeah.
And they always had been, and that's fair, and that's fine.
Yeah, and I feel like, kind of in retrospect with this album, that's kind of how you have to look at it too. It's just like, it is what it is. It's a Motorhead album, good or bad. They weren't really going to write anything better than Orgasmatron or, their first couple albums, Ace of Spades. Like, it just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, but they kept having to go, but people still kept buying them, and more power to them.
Yeah, I mean, it worked.
People kept seeing them. I wouldn't fucking go see them. It was and it was great.
Yeah. I mean, this didn't stop them. It didn't like put them back any at all. I don't think. But I mean, for 30 years though, I will say, out of all the Motorhead stuff, I don't think I would go straight to listening to this album. I don't know if it necessarily holds up either.
Yeah, listening to this one's a bit of a chore.
Yeah, it is. I agree. Because there's some weird choices, on this album. It feels like some of the songs just, they don't fit. Not only with each other, but like some of like how they crafted the actual songs, like the chorus and verses, like they just feel weird. Some of them, like they take a weird turn. It's like, okay, I guess that's the same song, but it doesn't feel like the same song.
Yeah.
That's just, I don't know. That's just what I think about it.
Well, what do you think about the next album on the docket we got here?
Yeah, so that's kind of it for Motorhead. I'm sure some of you will disagree with it being like, I'm not even going to say it's a terrible album. It's just, it is an album. It's, So, the next one we're going to talk about is Creator's Terrible Certainty. And this was an interesting record because Creator decided to do a pretty hefty stylistic change in terms of like their music, and not only that, like their songwriting elevated immensely with this record too, and it's pretty well produced. I mean, doesn't sound. It sounds like the '80s, but it doesn't sound like super great. But it's pretty damn good.
Exactly, and keeping in mind this is basically a follow up to 1986. Basically, one of the most well-regarded, well-revered kind of thrash metal albums, Pleasure to Kill.
Yes, and that's the thing is like that was an immense album for them. Very rarely do bands follow up with like a better album, and not only that, like the songwriting getting better. Like it does happen for sure, but it's few and far between when something like that happens. And really, with Terrible Certainty, man, like they did just that. I mean, this album didn't really do anything to dent their perception that they were one of the best bands in the genre. And it seems like too that they had a lot more time to kind of work on the songs beforehand. So they also went back up to being a quartet, and they added a guitarist. I'm probably gonna say his name wrong, but George Trzebowski.
Yeah, just go with it.
Yeah, so he's their new guitar player, and he definitely brought a lot of dynamic to not just the songwriting, but the overall sound and even stylistic shift as well.
Yeah, exactly. And like I've never really particularly been like a big Creator fan. I think the first time I ever heard Creator was like during like a Headbangers Ball when like Enemy of God, that kind of film clip and song and album came out. I thought it was okay, but like I never really kind of went back. And this was probably about 2006, so I never probably went back to it. I was probably about like maybe 4 or 5 years after that. So yeah, I don't really have like a kind of a really kind of an attachment, but I will listen to them from time to time.
Yeah. And
this is an album that I'll put on from time to time if I want to do it.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Like I've never been super into a Creator, but if it comes on, I'm not like mad about it. At least the earlier stuff. Some of the later stuff, I'm like, I'm gonna probably skip it, But this album, yeah, I like this album. The one thing is, they changed like the vocal styles on this album. He doesn't do as many. Yeah, he doesn't do like the pretty much like primitive death metal growl. He kind of goes a little bit more thrash metal style. I mean, even the songs too, like they're a little bit more thrash based on this album.
Yeah, and again, it for the most part it works. Yeah,
I agree. And the thing about too this album, you have to think too, this album, and not only this one but their first two, definitely still inspired a lot of death metal bands as well. And when you talk about like the history and genres forming, we're in '87 right now. There's a lot of death metal that's about to start to fucking hit the scene within the next couple of years.
Exactly, and there's stuff that either has just come out, or there's stuff that this is like right on the cusp of it to explode like it did.
Yeah, and for being a band from Germany, like that's massive to be that much of an influence on a lot of bands, that we're gonna eventually start talking about a little more, like Cannibal Corpse and
like Suffocation, Deicide.
Yeah. All the whole Florida scene and
good shit.
Yeah. So even bands like Sepultura too, and you have to think about that. They're from fucking Brazil, but even they're like Creator fans, and we will be getting to a Sepultura album on our next episode, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, we will. Don't worry.
So, yeah, this album, it's a giant step for them in sound and style. The guitar work is a lot more complex, man. Like the technique is kind of like a new word that you can say that they learn. They learn a lot more technique for the songwriting, and there's a lot of melodies in their music now. If you really think about it, Storming with Menace, is like a good example of like a lot of melodies that they kind of put into it.
Yeah, I feel like they've got, they've a lot more kind of technique, but also got a little bit more kind of variety.
Yes.
And it's more kind of varied as far as like songwriting, but also in like, we're talking about songwriting, we're talking about, skill, and we're also talking about tempo of the songs too. Not everything is just fast.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of important because, I mean, sure, there are albums that, speed is good and all that, especially for a thrash metal album, but
what are you going to contrast that speed with? What are you going to compare it to?
Yeah, and I think this album does a good job of like doing that, where it's like kind of, it's not all fast, but there's like some good songs that like kind of are mid-pace.
Yeah. So,
I mean, even that though. The drums, man, the drums are pretty fast, a lot faster than they were on the last album. And I don't know, the lyrics are probably the only thing that kind of changed up a little bit. They're not so like Carnage based like the first two albums, like typical death metal. But there are some like anti-religious subject matter and stuff about like humanity. Probably some misanthropic lyrics in there, I'm sure.
Of course, yep. But yeah, like 30 years, are we saying that this holds up?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I'm not entirely sure, like if it came out today, if this were to be an album that came out today, I'm not sure it would do so well. But I could be wrong, You never know.
Yeah, I don't think it would probably hold up today, but if you're listening to this kind of record today with the ears of 1987, this would be an above average album. This would be good.
Yeah, and it makes me think too, kind of like, where Creator kind of stands in the whole like pantheon of like not just death metal but thrash metal too. Especially for being a German band, it's kind of like a whole nother league and a whole nother style of thrash altogether. And with the bands that they've influenced just from their music alone, I think it's safe to say that they should definitely always be in that conversation. Maybe not the big four, the big five, whatever, but they're definitely one of the better bands.
And they're still going, pretty strong. They're still going pretty strong.
They are, yeah, totally.
Bunch of mates went out to go see him couple of months, about probably a month and a half ago. About basically 1,000 people. Room was packed.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, so they're still a thing. They're still going, and good on them.
I think they did put out an album pretty recently. I could be wrong about that, but
yeah, I think they would have if they're touring. Yeah,
it makes the most sense, especially with a band like that. Like, they're not just going to tour for no reason.
Yeah, they did. They put one out at the start of the year, Gods of Violence.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
Their 14th album, so
whew.
Kudos.
Hey, 30 years, 14 albums, going strong. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that wraps up Creator. So this next album, it was actually really, really fucking hard to find any information on it whatsoever. And that is Armored Saints Raising Fear. I don't know why this one was so hard. It was their third album. Armored Saints, kind of one of those bands that I don't want to say they're middle of the road, but they're not massive,
They weren't massive, but what people would really take away from Armored Saint, and this is going to be controversial, but their singer John Bush, who we all know after Joey Belladonna left Anthrax, at the late 80s, early 90s, John Bush came in and replaced it for 10 years, and the style just went from like Madhouse, like all those kind of like the old kind of 80s thrash to more kind of like grungy type, like Metallica's Black Album kind of type music. And to be perfectly honest with you, I actually like that more. There's that album they put out, I think The Greater of Two Evils. It was John Bush singing the old songs of Anthrax, and that's probably one of their best albums they've ever put out.
Yeah, he was. I was reading a couple of interviews that they didn't really pertain to this record, but in doing research, I read a lot of stuff, and he was kind of talking about his time in Anthrax, and he was like, me and Joey Belladonna are like different singers, but he can actually. He was like, he can sing better than me. Like, he can hit notes that I can't hit, so I think he's the better singer. But I have my own style, and that's kind of what makes us different, and that's what matters most. And I was like, oh, that's fucking cool that he was like totally like kind of like giving props to Joey Belladonna that he's like a better singer, but only because his style's different.
Yeah, exactly. And I think then there's been some occasions. I think when I went to go see him a couple of times, they've even played. And this was with. No. I've seen him both with John Bush and with Joey Belladonna. And Belladonna was actually singing like a couple of like Bush songs. I think they did like Only, and like Safe Home.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so that was actually really cool.
Yeah, so I mean, you have a famous lead singer. This is probably like how he ended up getting in Anthrax anyways, because they knew him from Armored Saint. And I think one of the main reasons that it's so hard to find any information on this record, it's because there was a lot of shit going on with their record label at the time, where like there was fucking lawsuits going on, and we've come back to this time and time again, man. And it's so fucking unfortunate how a lot of these record labels treated these bands as nothing but like a quick buck. They weren't worried about like actually helping the band or like anything like that. So it always causes these weird rifts in bands, and then their albums get put out and they're shitty albums, and it's so unfortunate, I think. So I think that's probably a lot of I think the reason why.
And it's like exactly. And then when we're talking about kind of in the late kind of 80s, when there's almost kind of starting to be a kind of a little bit of kind of saturation in the market. As soon as you're on a roll, like Armored Saint they were really on a roll, and this album kind of came out and really just derailed it.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, it really like kind of hurt them. And not only that, they had Phil Sandoval, who left the band after their last album. And not only that, this is their last album with their other guitarist, Dave Pritchard, who died from leukemia. And he killed himself before he could like die from the cancer, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it's a lot of stuff to kind of deal with around this album. It's kind of unfortunate, that the band never really kind of got their due, I guess. But
exactly. And I feel like for reasons that we've gone into, Armored Saint really do need to be talked about. They do need basically a place on the table to say yes, they were there around this time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of why like it sucks I couldn't find more information, and I obviously can't talk to the guitar player who's dead. But I think it would be cool eventually, like if we could find a way to get in touch with these guys, to like kind of get a little more background and see what kind of happened around this time, or like find a book that has more information or something. Because it's really, I gotta be honest, guys, it's kind of hard doing research for this stuff sometimes, especially like even just like Google searching for hours and hours, or surfing YouTube videos just to find like any information possible on these things. It's hard sometimes. Like stuff gets lost, out there, and there's just not a lot of information on some things. And
yeah, exactly. When you're really kind of just like 1-2 people doing it, it's like,
yeah. And I don't know, if I wish I knew how to reach out to like all these bands and people just to kind of like, even if just like an email exchange just to kind of get more information, that'd be cool. But it's fucking hard. So
yeah,
that's
exactly.
kind of. I mean, how do you feel about the album? That's kind of it for Armored Saint. But I feel like this album's, it's all right. I don't know. I probably wouldn't listen to it again.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't listen to it again. I mean, they did do a cover of a Lynyrd Skynyrd song.
Yeah.
Why? Yeah, no, I probably wouldn't listen to this one again.
Yeah, I agree. So the next band we're going to talk about is a band that I like, kind of. It's a double-edged sword. So we're going to talk about Carnivore's Retaliation. And Carnivore, if most of you don't know, is the band that Pete Steele from Type O Negative had before Type O Negative. And we did talk about Type O Negative's October Rust on our last episode, so it's kind of cool that we can transition into this album, from our last episode. And Carnivore is such a different fucking monster from Type O Negative that comparing the two is stupid, because even Pete's vocal style is completely fucking different from Type O Negative with that, low baritone bass vocals that he does. It's so fucking different. It's way more punk and hardcore, angry vocal style, like harsh vocals.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I really do feel like the kind of, because of Type O Negative, they're so kind of overlooked. But you go back to them and it's like, yeah, this is actually pretty good.
It is. And you can tell that, this band influenced, or maybe not influenced, but was also out around the same time like other bands like Cro-Mags and Agnostic Front. Black
Oh yeah,
Flag.
they really kind of were like a big kind of forefront on that. Not so much a big forefront, but they did have a foot in the door as far as that whole like crossover movement went.
Yeah,
Yeah.
big time. So for this is their second album actually. I'm sure we'll get back to their first album. We're kind of skipping around here doing some things, but this is their second album. Came out in '87, obviously. And with this album, they actually had a couple member changes. Their guitar player Keith Alexander left the band, and he, excuse me, he got replaced by Mark Piovanetti. I hope that's right. Piovanetti. I like fucking with people's names. Fuck it.
Yeah.
He's from Brooklyn, just like everybody else. So you had Pete and Louie still in the band, which is good. And so this new guy, Mark, comes in, and they decide to kind of change up other aspects of the band, kind of getting rid of their post-apocalyptic theme that they had with their last album, and they're kind of going for a more punk blue-collar look, which is pretty funny.
Exactly. It's funny in the sense as like I'm looking at the album cover right now, and it's pretty iconic. I actually really like this artwork, and it just screams post-apocalypse.
I know.
It just absolutely screams like there has been like a nuclear holocaust that's just happened.
Yeah, it kind of looks like like a Fallout kind of dude in a way.
Yeah, it really does. Like the Brotherhood of Steel. Yeah.
Yeah, like you were saying, it's very iconic. So I know before I knew that they were members of Type O Negative in there, I would always like see it associated, and I'm like, why the fuck is this? Like, what even is this? And then this was a long time ago when I finally checked it out. I was like, oh, okay, now this makes sense. It was band before the band kind of deal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, so. This album gets a little bit of criticism because of the lyrical themes. A lot of people were under the impression that a lot of the lyrics were like really racist and what's the other word? Xenophobic, I think.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, it's just basically things that people don't like today.
Yeah, but really, it's just all themes of war, violence, and sex, and retaliation, and just like a lot of intensity that kind of comes with you when you're an angry Brooklyn native.
Yeah, exactly. When you are essentially the working class, and you're living in kind of the Brooklyn, kind of very surrounded by all of this stuff. Of course, and you want to focus your lyrics on that. It's like not of course it's what's going to come out, but it's like it's pretty like evidently that this is what came out.
Yeah, and I mean, growing up in the late '80s, you have all that like post-disco cocaine boom, and it's just like a weird time, at least in Brooklyn and New York City in general, I would think. So yeah, I mean, this kind of like a little excerpt I have here. Pete Steele, he's talking about like, I'm kind of fucking jealous. I wish I was born in the '80s and got to live through them, but he talks about going to CBGBs all the time in like '85 and '86, and basically, he says Retaliation was extremely influenced by his discovery of hardcore music at CBGB in '85 and '86. So what I strive to do is create an album that was half Black Sabbath, half Cro-Mags, Agnostic Front, Murphy's Law, Sheer Terror, Black Flag, and stuff like that. I love the heaviness, the slowness, the dirge of Sabbath, but at the same time, going to CBGB on Sundays for the matinee, there was so much unbelievable energy in there, it didn't even matter if the bands weren't in tune. So, I mean, that kind of sums up how this record sounds. If you really think about it, it is like a mishmash of all those fucking bands.
Yeah, and it works. For the most part, it works.
Yeah, and I mean, that goes back to my point that I've said in like so many episodes, is like, obviously like the main influence where things start are Black Sabbath, but you can't talk about metal without fucking punk rock and hardcore, and this is where hardcore is starting to really, come out and meld, and all these bands. I really definitely want to get back and like talk about Cro-Mags and Agnostic Front albums for sure, because I fucking love both of those. Yeah,
no, I feel you, man. I feel you.
But yeah, so I mean, that kind of sums it up, man. You have this whole melting pot of all these genres, and it just shows that there's so much more going into these bands that come out. You know, I would love to hear a band that's like, oh yeah, Carnivore is like my main influence. And, well, fuck yeah, that makes so much sense. And then you look back at everything else that came before it, and it's like, yeah, that makes sense too. So
yeah, and yeah, like I said, this is still a good album. Well, both their albums are still really good.
Yeah,
like that first album they put out was with the song that 10-minute song was 3 and 4.
Yep,
that's great. That's absolutely great, and it's such a shame that I feel like they're kind of getting put to kind of like the wayside.
Yeah, they did kind of get lost in the shuffle of history, if you will. This band doesn't come up very often, but when it does, it's like, oh yeah, that was Pete Steele's band before Typo Negative. That's all people know about it. They don't really know about the music and how it sounds. Or some people do, obviously, but not a whole lot of people. I think a lot of kind of people, especially now with the internet, it's easier to find that out. But back 10 years ago, I didn't even know who the fuck Carnivore was. To be honest.
it was one of those things where it's like, check out this band Carnivore. It's like, dude, you fucking know Carnivore. And you got that fucking instant indie cred. I can imagine.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's straight up what Carnivore would be, I reckon.
Yeah. Yep, you're not wrong. But yeah, there was a lot of stuff that kind of brought the band back into light kind of after Pete's death too, which is obviously unfortunate, but I was reading a huge article, and this guy was just talking about kind of getting to see a lot of the Carnivore stuff from back in the day. He was actually a fan of the band, and then he ended up writing the biography of Pete Steele kind of after he passed, to get
post.
Yeah. Seriously.
That's what I was looking for. Yeah, Jace.
Yeah. So
Go
ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say so these issues, the album came out in '86, came out on CD. I think it came out on cassette first, then CD on '91. It got reissued in 2001, and then it got remastered in 2008.
Yeah, and that's kind of the last anybody's really done with the record. I'm kind of curious with next year, or even I'm surprised that this year they didn't do some kind of 30th anniversary release on vinyl or something like that.
Yeah, or even just make mention it's it's not some kind of defunct label that had it. This came out on Roadrunner.
Yeah, this is one of the first few really cool Roadrunner releases from back in the day.
Oh, dude, fucking, we got to do a thing on just Roadrunner.
Yeah, dude. I think there's a lot of record companies too. I don't know if you've been. We're gonna go off on a tangent here for a second. I don't know if you've been seeing all the stuff that Earache's been doing for their 30 years of being a record company. They've been putting out some cool ass shit, little videos of oh, here's Carcass and how we discover Carcass, or here's Morbid Angel and how we put out these Morbid Angel records, and it's just oh, dude, this is so fucking cool.
I've been meaning to basically sit down and watch all those.
Yeah, it's pretty neat, man. I've kind of been wanting to figure out a way to reach out to Digby Pearson and be like, dude, come on our podcast and talk about everything Earache records.
Just talk.
Yeah. It'd be fucking great. I bet he would have stories for days.
Oh my god. But
so one last,
sorry, you were gonna say.
Yeah, one last little fact about this record. One of the, I think it's the very beginning thing. It's a sound of somebody vomiting in a toilet and a door slamming. A lot of people used to think that it was actually one of the members vomiting in a toilet and them recording it, but actually that is not true. It was not anybody puking. All it was a bunch of soup cans dropped into a bathtub, accompanied by a slamming door. There you go. It's Foley work at its finest. So, I mean, for 30 years, I think this album is still pretty good. The production's a little... I haven't listened to the remastered one, so I don't know how that sounds, but I know the original is kind of the production.
Yeah. But I feel like that this one holds up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good album. You know, we were talking about, like, you know, bands like Cro-Mags and that, excuse me, Agnostic Front. I would easily still listen to this along with those albums today. Like, no problem.
Yeah.
So, if you have not heard Carnivore, guys, like, go check them out. Fucking, it's on YouTube. You can find anything on YouTube, Spotify, whatever. It's definitely worth going back and seeing where, like, Pete Steele and company kind of got started, and, you know, what his influences. Because, funny enough, like, a few of the songs on Typo Negative's first record were reused Carnivore songs that never got put on their next record because they just broke up after this. So, all right, moving on, we're gonna go to Grim Reaper's "Rock You to Hell." Yeah,
it's almost a bit of a. Yeah, I was gonna say it's almost a bit of a 180 when comparing from going from Pete Steele to these guys.
Yeah, so Grim Reaper, you know, they're like one of those middle of the road kind of like Judas Priest, Iron Maiden type bands.
Yeah, like very very kind of like Priest light.
Yeah, and this is kind of another thing that it was like really hard to find a lot of information about this record. So the information that I got is just kind of about the band in general, along with, you know, what they're all up to now. You know, they started to do a follow-up in 1985. So they only spent 9 days on the record. This is the one from 1985. It was Fear No Evil, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
Yeah. So it didn't do as good as See You in Hell. And that kind of, you know, that I guess that happens when, like, you're a band that's just kind of like aping off other bands. I hate to say,
like they were kind of riding a wave at the time because it was 1984.
Yeah.
Number of the Beast would have been out for about a year now, so.
Yeah, so I mean, there was still time, like people were, but that was the thing, is like everybody was.
No, hang on, sorry, no. That came out in '83. It only got released a year after in '84 in the States.
Gotcha.
But either way, it was still basically riding on the success of like, you know, Priest, like British Steel, and like raining, like, you know, Screaming for Vengeance, like Maiden's like Number of the Beast and all that.
Yeah, exactly. Like so many bands were trying to jump on that new style, you know, that new sound. And you know, it's kind of like what we talked about. You know, you have these bands that aren't doing it quite as good as the originals, so they become imitators. And you kind of need those imitators to make the originals still sound good, but also the new jacks that really take that sound and run with it and make it better to make those bands sound better. So that's kind of what I feel like Grim Reaper is. Like, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, like the album cover for Fear No Evil is basically just like some kind of plague doctor driving a motorbike through a plate glass window. Like if that does not scream Judas Priest to you, then I don't know what does.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I agree. So pretty much what happened with this record, they recorded it all in 1985, and their third album was going to be put out with this company, or Ebony Records, and basically the recording was so bad the label never released it. So the band had a dispute between the label and the band, obviously. So that's what delayed this record for 2 years. So they recorded it in 85, and 2 years it didn't get put out, and the dispute was eventually settled, and the band signed on with the RCA, who demanded that they re-recorded the album. So it eventually was released in September of 87, but they wrote it back in 85 and recorded it within 9 days. So, I mean, that says a lot right there that, you know, if you have one record company that wouldn't put it out because it was so bad and it was clearly rushed the way they recorded it, and then you have a new record label that's like, fuck that, re-record this, it sounds like shit. Mistakes. Somebody made a mistake in there, you know, that was just like, maybe they didn't have the money, maybe they didn't have a good place to go to. I don't know exactly, you know, what happened, but they should have just listened to their original record company and maybe took a step back for a minute and been like, hey, maybe we should have taken a little bit more time with this record to record it properly.
Exactly. And it's like I said, we're talking about from basically being like kind of a follow-up for those first two albums. Like, They really could have had something, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It just kind of is what it is, I suppose.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, I mean, you know, the band, this was their last album, pretty much. Grim Reaper, you know, the band, they didn't really make enough money to make a living, as happens with bands like this. So each of the band members kind of worked regular jobs, even at the height of their popularity. And, you know, the life of a struggling musician is just kind of too much for one of the members, who he just kind of quit the band after this. And then you have Steve Grimmett, who kind of went on to still kind of do music. He kind of did some other bands. He was in Onslaught, Lion's Heart, and eventually he did his own version of Grim Reaper. It's called Steve Grimmett's Grim Reaper. So
nice.
Yeah, and then you have Bocott, who went to write for a circus, you know, like the magazine, Circus Magazine, which was a pretty big magazine back in the day. I remember getting Circus all the time when I was a kid. So yeah, he's like a big writer now. He's written for Guitar World. So that's kind of everything about them. I think pretty recently, if I remember reading correctly, the singer Grimmett had to have like his leg amputated or some shit, which is kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, no, that's no good. Don't really know what to say to that.
Yeah, so I mean, for having all of that mess with, you know, having to re-record an album, I mean, it's pretty clear the album doesn't hold up. It didn't even hold up back then, you know?
Yeah, it's I feel like it's important to see that this is kind of what really kind of does happen when you really do oversaturate a market with a certain type of you know, like a product. And this is exactly, it's just really kind of evident as to why not everyone can make it. It's unfortunate, but just keep going.
Yeah. I mean, they tried, man. They made an effort. And it like I said, it's still worth it to kind of talk about them, just because you kind of have to talk about these bands.
Because otherwise no one will.
Yeah. And I don't want to skip out on, like, anybody just because, you know, maybe they weren't as prolific as whoever the fuck, you know. But that's like, the fun of music, man. And, you know, kind of listening to this stuff is, like, really cool, too.
Yeah, it's like getting lost down the you know, the record store kind of like bargain bin and just finding old gems, or going down like the YouTube rabbit hole.
Yeah, oh man, I get sucked in YouTube rabbit holes all the time.
It's just, you know, just when you thought you were out, it keeps pulling you back in.
I think it happened to me the other day, man. I forget what I was watching, but it was like I started off with like black metal, and then I ended up with like slam metal, and I was just like, man, I'm all over the place right now. This is crazy.
Dude, I went one through like grunge the other day, like grunge and like 90s alternative rock.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, it started off with like the Pumpkins, and then it just like, I don't know what happened, then it just like ended with the Pumpkins again.
Oh, man. So, all right. So before we get to our last record we're going to talk about, let's talk about these new releases. I think we're good on time. This will be good. I definitely want to talk about these records for sure.
Yes.
So, do you want to talk about Converge first, or I Detest?
How about we just go with Converge?
Okay, cool.
Yeah, this was one that really kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, man, I'm like a diehard Converge fan. So, the Wait.
Well, the thing is, like, it really kind of stood out, but also I really kind of slept on this. I only just realized that this came out.
I've been waiting for it. So, like, I knew November 3rd. I'm there.
Yeah, because I heard they I know they put out like 2 or 3 songs before, and I was like, okay, they're probably just going to do like an EP or just kind of like whatever. I didn't realize they're actually putting out an album, and then I got a message from you saying, hey, the album's out, go listen to it.
Yeah.
So I put the headphones on, went for a bit of a run today, and whole thing start to finish one go.
Yeah, man, that's the thing I love about Converge records. Like, they're always short enough to where it's like, fuck, that's it, I want to listen to this again, but also to where, like,
it isn't like, oh, is that it?
Yeah, exactly. It's never like, oh man, I wish there was more. It's like, fuck, that was perfect. Like they know how to craft a record in such a good amount of time, and it's so crazy to me that this band has been around as long as they have and still managed to put out really good records.
Yeah, really good and really interesting records. I feel like some of the really kind of songs on this one, on this album here, that really kind of stood out wasn't like the typical kind of Converge songs that we all know. They're just really kind of fast, million miles an hour. But it's the ones where they kind of like really slow everything down, and it really kind of just sounds weird. Like I think like the duskiness and Trigger were kind of like highlights and standouts for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's the first song on the record. I just love...
Yeah, and that first song too. Oh, that opening riff, dude.
Yeah, that one, and just like the way the double bass hits in that song too. They don't really do a lot of songs with double bass like that. And man, it's just got such a good fucking like hit, a single tier. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
It's just got like a good hit to it. It's like, fuck yeah, man. I'm sitting here just like going at it. I don't know, man. I was like super into like the way that it sounds. And I mean, 13 songs, you think that's a lot, but it doesn't feel like it. And it's like almost a 45-minute album too.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm actually really psyched and stoked on this album, and I actually can't wait to listen to it again.
Yeah, and for me, dude, it was such a long wait because All We Love, We Leave Behind that came out in like 2011, that was such a good fucking album. Like I listened to it
really was, yeah.
Stop for like a year, if not longer. And same thing with, I mean, all their albums. Like I said, I'm a huge Converge fan, so
it fucking sucks. I've never actually seen them live.
I have seen them live twice.
I remember the one time they came out, and this was probably the last time they came out. It was them and like fucking Genghis Tron.
Fuck, dude, that would have been a good show.
And I was like, oh, god damn it, I have like zero money.
I saw them in 2009 when No Heroes came out, and I saw them with Mastodon.
Oh, yeah?
And then I saw them on that Decibel tour they did a couple years ago. I think that was the one with At the Gates.
Yeah, that sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah, and that was a killer show. But, dude, they kill it live. I mean, I was... Again, this is like, you know, a band that's put out a fuck ton of albums at this point, so I didn't expect that they were going to put out a bad album, but I also didn't expect it to be this good. And I was like, wow.
Yeah, exactly. And this was like a, 3-4 year wait?
Longer than that.
No. Oh, yeah, because because All We Love We Punk came out in 2012, so it's like 5 years this took.
Yeah, that's a long time.
To come out, and it's fine. Like, to me, I feel like I thought that the previous album came out about 2 years ago.
Yeah, and it
really kind of just speaks to the quality of the work, where you aren't like waiting and counting down the days. I mean, I know you were, but even for me, like I love Converge, but I really wasn't like I said, this album just kind of came out of nowhere for me. I don't know if it's because I'm not paying attention or whatever happened, but I'm so glad that I found this today.
Yeah, man, I think that they took the right amount of time to do the record. Like, they weren't trying to rush it out or just get something out. Like, they just did it at their own pace, and it works. It paid off. And you know, that's the other thing, too, about Converge is, like, you're not just getting songs, you're getting a whole package of art, because Jacob Bannon does all his own artwork for the band, and he always does such a phenomenal job on the artwork. The one that really got me is, like, they did that little EP that came out right before the album called I Can Tell You About Pain, and the imagery that goes with that song is so poignant and, like, fits perfectly. That's like, fuck, you know, I can look at it and be like, yeah, I get it. It makes sense to me, like, what you're trying to get across, not just with the song but with the imagery as well. And he does this a lot, even with, like, he did this thing called Dune Devil that's like music and his art, and it like each one corresponds with a song, and it's really cool. He's fucking talented. He's a talented dude. I don't know.
Yeah. And we were saying before, even, like, you know, you can really kind of, I'd love to see just how these kind of songs translate live.
I bet they crush. but they're fucking
Yeah, because like
awesome.
I've the other day I was listening to probably about a couple of weeks ago now. I was listening to that Jane Doe live album they put out.
Uh-huh.
And you could just feel the energy.
Yeah, dude. They've always like their shows are wild, man. I was not man enough to like go out and crowd surf or anything. I just like watch them because like with Converge,
you just be hypnotized.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like I want to watch them play. I don't want to like go crazy for them, you know, because they're so fucking good. It's just like I gotta watch. So yeah, man. Check out The Dusk in Us. It is out. It's been out for like a week. Longer than that, like 2 weeks now. It's obviously doing really well. No surprise there. If you're not a Converge fan, I get it, but I still think that you should maybe give their stuff a chance. Go listen to their past few albums.
Yeah, especially give this album a chance. Like I said, it's not like 100% just like like we're talking just a million miles an hour. Like things have been a little bit slowed down for the better, and it's to actually serve the album as a whole.
Yeah, yep, I agree. So the next album we're going to talk about is they're a newer band, but not quite. All the members are from other bands. They're actually kind of a local band from here where I'm at. They're called I Detest. They just put out an EP called Volume 1, and this band is comprised of Jonathan Huber, who used to be in Pathology and I Declare War, and then dude, and two of the guitar players from Enterprise Earth. So I'm not a big deathcore guy.
Dude, I fucking love this album.
Yeah,
this was exactly what I need.
Dude, same here. Like I've known Huber in passing. Like I've met him a bunch. I know like the dudes in I Declare War. So like I kind of know Jonathan. Like I've met him, I've hung out with him a bunch from touring and everything. So when I saw his name attached to this, I was like, I'm fucking in. Like, and I've kind of gotten into Enterprise Earth a little bit. Like I'm not super into them, but like I'll listen to it, you know. And I think that those guys are good guitar players. So when
sorry, I just cut out there.
Oh, you're all good.
I mean, yeah, we wouldn't have like fucking we wouldn't have this podcast if we didn't have at least fucking like 7 technical difficulties going while we do it.
That's like the funnest part.
Yeah, like you were just saying that like these guys were in what they were. Like I didn't realize that when I was listening to this thing, but like now that you're saying it, and now that like it just puts together, like I was listening to, it's like, yeah, this is basically 2011's I Declare War. This is essentially just like the next Pathology album.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely like a good culmination of what I Declare War could have gone to and what Pathology was.
But to be fair, I really do like since Huber left and Jamie Hanks got into I Declare War, the way they went up to there, I think it was from the self-titled one, I actually really like that stuff.
Yeah, I didn't like their newest album, if I'm being honest. It's okay.
The newest album's okay, but it's got some absolutely fucking crushes in there, but then it's just like,
Yeah. The thing that always, like, why I like them, though, is Jamie's vocals. He is a fucking beast of a vocalist, and so, like, that's why I'm, like, into it. But I think some of the guitar parts are, like, a little weak this time around. But that's just me. But that's, like, the antithesis about this album. And for being a 7-song EP, this album fucking crushes, dude. It
really does, yeah.
Goddamn heavy. And, like, not only that, it's, like, technically heavy. There's no, like, chuggy, just pure chugs, you know? It's not like fucking Immure or Black Tongue. Or,
where it's just like, it's the same thing, but then it's just, like, slowed down, the next time the riff's played. It just goes and it goes, and it's all for the better. And I'm absolutely stoked on this. I really cannot wait to see what this band does next.
Yeah, so I think it's like track 4 or track 5, like, opens up with like a shredding guitar solo, like just fucking wailing on that guitar, and then it goes straight into like this heavy as fuck like guitar riff, and it's like, god damn, dude, like it's a good album, man. I mean EP, whatever you want to call it, but these guys are new. Like this is a new band for all these guys, and they just put this EP out, so we're gonna link to it, and go fucking support them. Like, go buy this album. They're doing this all out of their own pocket. I'm not talking about it because I've, have any like favoritism or whatever. I genuinely
you aren't getting the bag with the $sign.
Yeah, no. I genuinely want to help these guys out and like see what they can do next. And I think that this band is worth checking out. Like I said, I'm not a big deathcore guy. Like I'll listen to like we said, I Declare War, Acacia Strain, Carnifex, and maybe a couple other things, but I'm not going like deep down that rabbit hole anymore. See,
and the thing is, I still do.
Cool, yeah, I totally get why people do.
I work in an office, so I have to.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get it. I don't know. It's just something I feel like I grew out of. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's fair.
Yeah.
And that's fair. But then when it comes on, it's like, this is just everything you've ever like kind of... This is just exactly what you need when you're in that kind of moment, when you're in kind of that moment, that mood, and just it's the right kind of song.
Yeah.
It's like, see you later.
Yeah, it just hits you and you're like, yeah, I'm into that. One last little record. I kind of listened to this one on my own. It's this band called Aosoth. They're like a kind of like a Portal-esque Death Spell Omega type black metal band. You guys should definitely check out that new album. It's called I forget what it's called. Well, just go to type in Aosoth on YouTube. They're doing like a album stream of their new album. So just go check it out. It's like 5 is, the numeral. It's got that in the title. That's all I remember. So yeah, 3.
All right.
I mean, there's definitely way more albums that came out, but, I think that's kind of all we can talk about.
Yeah, I mean, just so are we just getting back into the last album?
Yeah. So the very last album we're going to talk about today is Savatage, Hall of the Mountain King.
Yeah, but before we get to that, I just looked up your album. It is Aosoft, and the album title is 4 in Roman numerals, Arrow in the Heart.
Nope, that was the last one.
Oh. Oh, Inside the Scriptures, then.
There we go. I think that's it. Yep, the Inside Scriptures.
Check out both of them.
Yeah, actually, a couple other bands you should just check out that put out records. There's this one called Chaos Moon, and then Igor Savage Sinusoid. Fucking insane album right there. So that's some other stuff to check out, too, that was new. All right, so Savatage, Hall of the Mountain King. Last album for today. This is actually their 4th album, and it was released in 1987, obviously, under the direction of producer Paul O'Neill. So Paul O'Neill kind of began collaborating with Savatage, and I don't know exactly like what it was like that they wanted this guy so bad, but he was like a sought after dude. So it kind of helped because it was definitely, it made this album one of their more like revered albums in the metal scene. Like, people always talk about this album. This album has a song that is in Brutal Legend. It comes on pretty often if you play the game.
You've ever played that game? Yeah,
I played it. I have it. So it's kind of one of those records that cemented the band in terms of like their legacy, if you want to use that word, I guess. And the good thing too is, this album outpaced sales of their previous records, which is good. Record companies always like that. And the one we were talking about, the title song, is their best known song, the Hall of the Mountain King.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's to me, this album's all right. I'm not the world's biggest fan of this, but if you like it, you like it, and I've got no dramas with that.
Yeah. So the other thing about the working with O'Neill is, when they were working with him producing it, he actually co-wrote a lot of the album's material with the Oliver brothers, and this is a process they would repeat on their subsequent albums. which is interesting because a lot of times, when you have producers that come in and like try and write stuff, like they kind of fuck shit up, more often than like help. You know what I mean? But it actually worked out in the band's favor, and basically in their first writing session, O'Neill discovered that his initial assessment of Chris's talent was accurate. So Chris could play anything you could imagine, he says. He could work a solo around a vocal without stepping on it, and he was one of the few guitarists who knew how to convey the emotion of the human voice with a guitar. He was a combination of the angst of Duane Allman on Layla, the excitement of Jimmy Page, the emotion of Eric Clapton, and the raw feel of Joe Perry, and the dexterity of Eddie Van Halen or Alan Holdsworth. So basically, the dude's a good guitar player. He knows how to fucking write a song, and they worked well together, basically.
Yeah, no, it's really good to see when you can basically, when the artist can speak so highly of essentially your producer.
Yeah. Yeah, and this was kind of the point where the band's style kind of changed a little bit too. They're kind of, this is where people like distinguish between like old and new Savatage, and they did kind of change a little bit more towards progressive metal on this record, which is, I don't know if I would really compare it to Dream Theater, but when I think prog metal, that's, kind of what I think is Dream Theater.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily call this prog metal, but, it's definitely...
You can see where it starts.
Yeah, it's got a start of it, so that's pretty cool to see. And, you got other bands in that genre, kind of like Blind Guardian, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's a little more power metal, but... Yeah.
Yeah, but you can see like kind of the progginess of like the early 90s like kind of music or metal. Yeah, it's you can really kind of really trace it back and see this as like a big kind of like blueprint.
Yeah. Yeah, and this this album has like a couple instrument tracks on it that kind of go like a little bit beyond like simple guitar riffs and solos, especially the song Prelude to Madness and Last Dawn. So, the band's clearly trying to write more catchy stuff that doesn't, I guess, heavily revolve around like lyrics and vocals. And I don't think obviously bands are doing it, but not a lot of bands are doing it back then. Not like now. Like, I feel like almost every band puts an instrumental on their records nowadays. Feels like, anyways. I could be wrong.
Oh yeah. Oh, of course. When it comes to like the whole progressive stuff, yeah, it's they really got to do that.
Yeah. And the song Prelude to Madness is an arrangement of Grieg's In the Hall of the Mountain King from the Peter Gynt suite. And oddly enough, Grieg is not credited for that song, but for the following title track, which ironically is a completely original song. So, go figure.
Exactly, mate.
And yeah, so I think that this album, you can kind of tell that working with this guy O'Neill really pushed them into like a whole nother level and like really, really worked for them. And that doesn't happen to a lot of bands.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, when it works, it absolutely works. And when you have a song like House of the Mountain King, where it's like such a where you as a band you've found that song that basically like that is your career. That's like your most kind of like well-known song, and it isn't like the first thing out of the gate. It's something that you've probably actually sat down with a producer with, and actually just really kind of just nodded it out.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's cool that I don't know. I don't know really how I feel about the band personally. Like, the album was okay to me, but album's okay. The main song's cool. Yeah, I think for people who are more into the genre of music, like, probably fucking love this album. I can totally see why. And I don't know. It doesn't sound bad either. It sounds like a pretty good produced album. They definitely like put their money's worth into it, which is good.
Yeah, exactly. But I was going to say, we were talking about 30 years now. Are we saying this album holds up?
I think it does. Just because of the genre of music it is, there's not a whole lot of bands that sound like this today, if you really think about it.
Yeah, I think this album holds up if you're looking to if you already like kind of stuff like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you're kind of just like coming into it just kind of new, I'm not entirely sure that it does.
Yeah, I guess you kind of have to look at it both ways like that too. And this, oh yeah, one last thing. So this is actually the first record that has the album cover drawn by artist Gary Smith, who actually also did all of Chris Oliva's airbrush guitars. So like all that like really cool airbrush looking like medieval and I don't know. I guess is it medieval? Would you call it medieval?
Yeah, I'd call it really kind of like medieval type thing. It looks like fucking King Neptune.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's got like a fantasy kind of feel to it. So, like, he's responsible for all that cool art. It is pretty cool art, I will say. And, you know, we've talked about before that art and music pretty much go hand in hand, you know? So.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I was going to say, yeah, like, yeah, like it's still a pretty cool album cover. Just like I said, it's a really cool song, but I don't know about the album.
Yeah, I can take it or leave it. And, you know, for those of you out there that do like Savatage, I totally get it. It's just not my thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, any other like closing kind of thoughts? Any final things before we get out of here?
You know, man, I think that wraps up September of 1987 for heavy metal history. I think there was a lot of... Actually, I will say this. If you look at all these records that came out this month, look at how many of them were failures. A lot of them. Probably like 2 of them were really good albums, and the rest were kind of mediocre or forgotten about. And that's a pretty big deal, I think. It's something worth kind of looking at.
Basically, what happens, you know, next? I mean, apart from that Grim Reaper album,
yeah,
they went on to make more.
Yeah,
they went on to make better. You know, more likely than not, they went on to make, you know, better albums, and they went on to better projects.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's just an interesting little tidbit that this is the heaviest month out of that entire year where all these albums came out, and like half of them aren't that good, more than half, and you know. Not only that, the bands like didn't do anything after a lot of these albums, or the output wasn't as good. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. A lot of albums come out, but not all of them were that good.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys. Well, that wraps up this episode of the podcast. As usual, thank you for your patience in the episodes coming out. You know, as much as I wish we could record all the time, unfortunately, our schedule is just getting away, and you know, we do this kind of as a hobby, so...
Yeah, and it's probably going to get a little bit more kind of hectic kind of as we go down basically into the month and lead up to Christmas.
Yeah.
But, you know, come Christmas time...
Oh, boy,
it's happening.
Yeah, me and Matt got some cool shit, hopefully in store for that, so... we're pretty stoked to get that out to you guys. Well, that'll be our year too, a full year as a podcast.
Yeah, dude. I absolutely can't wait.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. We're not going to tell you guys what we're doing. This is a little surprise, but it's going to be fucking badass.
Yeah.
As usual, follow us on all of our social media stuff, Heavy Metal History. Please rate and review us on iTunes if you have a few extra minutes. It definitely helps us out. Shoot us an email, shoot us a Facebook message, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. And until next week, cheers, cunts.
Cheers, cunts. See you later.
Be excellent to each other.
And party on, dudes!